Hello, welcome to a Gamasutra video interview. Today I'm talking to Chris Hecker, who is in the midst of creating SpyParty, and you can just see him just next to me, just there. So the idea is going to be that we're going to play SpyParty against each other, and Chris is going to probably destroy me, but fortunately I'm going to ask him questions which is going to put him off, hopefully, and maybe you'll see me get a game, but probably not. So we need to choose, I guess, who's going to be the spy and who's going to be the sniper before we start anything.
Well, whoever picks first.
Okay, I'm gonna go spy because I'm
all right.
Interested.
Okay, so you should pick if we're gonna do. So we can do one of two things here.
Yeah.
Because I'm better than you at this game, and it's a player skill game.
Mm-hmm.
We can either handicap massively, and so we can basically that means you should pick like if you wanted to do ballroom, for example, you could pick, or even you could take one of the bigger maps, like you do veranda. You could pick any 3 of 7. So you scroll all the way down. So like if you go over, let's pick veranda let's do that. We'll see how it goes. So basically, like what this says is now go down and scroll all the way down. So not pick, not known, but any. And it'll say any 3 of 7.
Any 3 of 7, yeah. So I'm guessing I can do any of the 7, but I only have to do 3 of them.
Exactly. So I don't have any information about what missions you're going to do. So this is the most handicapped towards spy that you can get, right? Because you can opportunistically do any 3 missions. So like you spawn right next to the ambassador, boom, you bug the ambassador, walk over, flirt, that kind of thing. So and then the opposite handicap, which I'll do, is known 7, where I have to do all 7 missions, and that I'll do that. So we'll see. You should be able to shoot me for that, because that's pretty brutal.
So I guess what we should probably start by doing is maybe if you give like I'm sure most of the people watching this already know what SpyParty is, but it's probably worth giving like a brief idea of what is about to happen here, just for those people who haven't.
So SpyParty is an asymmetric multiplayer game. And eventually there'll be actually a single-player mode, which we can talk about, but which is very much in the like, wow, wouldn't it be interesting if kind of stage. But what the game that exists right now is a very asymmetric 1v1 multiplayer game. So one player, there's a cocktail party, fancy high society cocktail party, at the ambassador's mansion or whatever, and one player, and the cocktail party is full of people doing cocktail party things like having drinks and flirting with each other and like looking at the artwork and that sort of thing. And one player controls a character at that party and who's trying to blend into the party, but at the same time do spy missions, which are kind of tropes from spy and mystery fiction. So like things like bug the ambassador, or do a dead drop for the microfilm, or poison someone's drink, or those kinds of just all the kinds of things you might see in a Bond film or something like that. Meanwhile, but each one of those has tells associated with it. Tells, I use tells in the same sense that you use them in poker, where something that can give you away. Meanwhile, looking in from the outside of the party, a person who is not invited to the party and is clearly upset about it, is the sniper, who has a sniper rifle with a single bullet. So they don't have a lot of ammo, but they do have they have time to try and figure out who at the party is the actual spy. So when I say it's an asymmetric game, it's like there are very few games that are as asymmetric as SpyParty, meaning it's basically 2 completely different games being played in the same space. So the Spies game is a game of deception, trying to blend in, hiding in plain sight, sometimes trying to frame people, that kind of thing. The Snipers game is a game of perception, trying to reduce the number of suspects, trying to use make sure you're spending your attention, which is a resource in this game, wisely. You don't tunnel on somebody. We call it tunnel vision, where you're like, I know it's her, I'm going to follow her around. Meanwhile, the spy's like just traipsing around the party somewhere else. At the same time, you usually can't, especially in elite play, you're never 100% sure, or you're often not 100% sure at the end. And so another aesthetic theme of the game that we can talk about is this idea of consequential decisions with partial information. You have to make, as the sniper, you have the most consequential decision, which is you have 1 bullet and you have to decide who it is. Or who you think it is. And so there's a whole bunch of aesthetic themes in that little description that I just talked about that we can talk about in more detail. But that's the bones of the game, where the spy is trying to blend in and the sniper is trying to figure out who it is.
Okay, right. So what we're about to see then is people watching are going to be able to see my screen. So I'm
Right.
going to be the sniper who is walking around
You're the
and
spy.
essentially. Oh, sorry, yeah, the spy. And I'm essentially trying to blend in with the AI that is walking around me while doing the missions, whereas you are controlling what, from my perspective, is going to be a red line that is coming
Yes.
into the room, and I should very much not get spotted by that red line.
Well, so the feedback between the players right now, besides the fact that we're both on video chat, is that you can see this where the center crosshairs of my screen are. So you don't know I'm looking right there, and I play a style where I try and keep that kind of out of the map to not give very much information. So some people like to do what we call laser burning, where you kind of like put it on people you suspect and see if their behavior changes. Newbies tend to like 180 as soon as the laser comes around. And so, there's various things you can do, but it's a one piece of feedback between the two sides. And eventually there'll be more pieces of feedback between the two sides, like, the spy or the sniper being able to control certain things, like whether drinks are served and that kind of thing. But for now, you just have you have a basically approximation of what my view cone is. You can kind of see where I'm probably looking.
Yeah.
And like, for example, to highlight and low light, which is one of my suspect management things, which we'll see when you're playing sniper, I have to touch the person, the laser has to be aimed at the person to actually highlight and low light. So that's you can kind of, elite players are like, oh, I think she just got a highlight for that, I should try and frame her, that kind of thing, the goal of the game is to be this kind of like, very deep competitive multiplayer game, kind of like StarCraft, Street Fighter, Counter-Strike, games like that, LoL and Dota, where it's an incredibly deep, 1,000-hour, game. People stream it and things like that. The goal is to be that, but instead of it being about, orcs and space marines beating up on each other, it's about human behavior, like normal people, or slightly abnormal people because they're at a fancy cocktail party, but basically normal people doing normal things. So it's a competitive multiplayer game, but about human behavior, which is kind of odd, which is what makes it so weird.
Yeah.
And interesting, in my opinion.
Excellent.
Right.
Yeah, you've already said loads of things that have gone, like, when I've been playing in the past, I've not thought of any of these sort of crazy, like, laser burning tactics and things.
Yeah. I mean, the elite players. I mean, our top player. I don't even know I haven't checked what he's at right now, but he was at 350 hours of in-game playing the game last time I checked. I mean, these people, the really top players. In fact, I'm actually. I'm not good enough anymore. Like all the top 20 players are all better than me, and I actually need to start training more because when you're trying to make a esport level competitive multiplayer game like this, it's really important that the designer be pretty good. You don't have to be the best at the game, but you have to be good enough to know what's going on, design wise in the game. And I feel like I'm just at the edge of that at this point. Like I need to come back in it. So I've got a training regimen that I basically want to start doing because you have to actually practice. I mean, it's like a sport, right? So there's just endless numbers of these things. Like, I mean, another example, one that's like, that kind of took me by surprise is one of the top players started shooting people for talking second in a conversation. Okay, so you enter a conversation and you can decide to talk, right? And some of the tells are some of the missions you need to talk in the conversation to actually accomplish, like flirting, you need talking, contacting the double agent, which is that got the code word banana bread, which is kind of infamous now around the game. But here's the interesting thing: like normally, a spy would come into the conversation and a newbie spy would just immediately mash the button to start talking, right? But a more advanced spy would be like, oh, that would be suspicious if I did that, so I'll talk second. So this person started highlighting people for talking second because that's the thing that you would do to avoid talking first. It's like, it's just woo. It's it's turtles all the way down.
Yep.
All right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's crazy.
Well, maybe I'm going to do it second. Who knows? Let's find out.
We'll find out. There's a lot of people on this map, so I'm not an elite sniper anymore. So we shall see how it goes. Are you ready?
Let's do this.
Off we go. So should I try and talk while?
I mean, I can sort of give some ideas of what I'm doing as well. But yeah, you if you want to fill in some essentials about the game.
Yeah. So the very first thing I'm going to memorize the statues. So we got 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 1, 1, 3. 1, 3, 2, 3. So those are numbers that we associate with the height of the statues. Okay. So that's interesting. None of him, not her. So you just, as we say, banana breaded, and that means that no one. You have to be in a conversation circle to do that. So I got a bunch of lowlights from that, and you just did it again, giving me. Let's see. Do I? So this one guy just left a conversation right after the banana bread, which in elite play, if they do it exactly right, is called a banana split.
Okay.
You have to get a green. You have to get a green action test. Yellow danger. This guy over here, I've got the laser on right now, just adjusted at the statues. So which is a little suspicious. It looks like he missed the target. So that makes for.
So it could very well be him.
Well, it is him because he just swapped it too. Okay. Yes. So
see, I thought I'd swap that perfectly then, because I stopped it perfectly in the green. So I thought,
right, but the problem is you heard me memorize the statues.
Yeah.
No, you did it. You had a white action test. So see, if you look on the log, it says action test white. If you had gotten a green, it would not have swapped in your hand. If you get a green, it swaps in the next person's hand. However, I would have been looking for that because I had memorized the statues. You heard me memorize them early on, right? And so I knew that was a 1, which is the little Indiana Jones. You know, there's 3 statues, right? There's the Indiana Jones head, there's the Venus of Willendorf, and there's the Maltese Falcon. And that was a Indiana Jones idol head. And so you walked up there, and the thing is, so you can see I got 6 lowlights basically off of your early banana bread. So it's really risky actually to banana bread early. Banana bread is contacted the double agent for people who don't know why we're talking about pastries. So you banana breaded early, which unless you're really careful about who's out of conversation versus who's in conversation, it gives the sniper a lot of information, right? The audio tell, the banana bread audio tell, is you should, by the way, you should hit escape really quick and just go to settings and set visible sound effects on. Just that way, because we're talking, you can actually it'll print out. It's one of the top settings in there. Okay. Just check that and then go back out to the log again.
Yeah, there we go.
Just that'll print it on the screen so that when you're streaming, that's a big help just for people who are watching, because if we say something right with the top of the banana bread, they won't hear it. But anyway, so banana breading early gives the sniper potentially a lot of lowlights if you do it in a way that is where everyone isn't already in a conversation, and so it's a really risky strategy. That gets to one of the things that we were talking about earlier, which is like the audio tell, the banana bread, the content double agent is one of what we call a soft tell, and it's a deductive thing. Like the game Clue, or you guys call it Cluedo, is all deductivity, right? Like eventually you can just grind it down by eliminating rows and columns in that matrix on the little graph they give you, and now I know it's the candlestick, and now I know it's the living room, and now whereas I don't want that level of grindy deductivity, but I want a little bit of deductivity, and the banana bread tell, the contact double agent, is one place where that happens, where when you say that, when you do the contact, it allows you to eliminate anyone who's not in a conversation circle, right?
Yeah.
And so that allows me to reduce who I have to look at, which is a huge advantage, right? Because a huge part of being a sniper is managing information, like this, just this sea of information flying at you. You're just kind of drowning in information with all these characters, and they're all doing different things. And did that person was that person at the statues earlier? It's just really hard to manage all that. And so by eliminating 6 people, that's huge. That's a third of the party that just goes away, and I don't have to deal with them anymore.
So essentially, if I should be banana breading later into it, if I banana bread at all.
Right, exactly. I mean, unless you're trying to do something like advanced, which you should not be trying to do right now, given your current skill level, frame somebody, if you pick somebody who, let's say somebody spawned at the statues, right? So they're a little suspicious already, because if they spawned at the statue, especially in the back corner where I can't get to them in time at the very beginning to know what the statue was before, and that person was there, then that person's probably got a highlight at this point, and you could attempt to frame that person, wait for them to talk, and if you're pretty sure you can get a green banana bread, which doesn't raise your arms and talk, it just kind of whispers it, basically. I mean, it's the same audio, but your characters just looks like they're listening. It doesn't look like they're talking. Yeah. You can start to frame, you can start to build up, you make sure that person's in a conversation and talking, and you make sure they're in a conversation with the double agent, so that you know that I know that they were in the conversation with the double agent, etc. It's, I mean, like I said, it's a kind of crazy deep game. This is where this is not the kind of things you want to be thinking about right now, but you can actually do stuff like this. And in fact, I want to put more mechanics in that allow you to frame people. Right now, it's very difficult to frame someone, but I want to make it more possible.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a really interesting mechanic.
Definitely. Okay, right. Let's do another one then, and this time I won't banana bread. And
do you want to do spy again, or do you want to do sniper this time?
Yeah, I'm gonna do spy again because I feel like I died quite early on then.
Okay, so I won't shoot you this time. I will. We'll do a little mentoring in the game while. Once I identify you, or once I'm pretty sure I've identified you, I'll tell you, and then I'll say what gave it away, and then we can do a little bit of practice to see how like walking works and things like that.
That sounds fair. Yeah. Okay. So let me choose the characters.
Yes.
There we go. Right, I am ready. So I mean, I was going to ask you, essentially, I have lots of questions about human behavior because you've said before that,
me too,
and like you've just been saying now, this game is very much focused around human behavior. I mean, is there anything that since you've started developing this game, you think that you have learned? Is there any like major things you think you have learned about like the way that humans react in certain situations?
Well, I think there's a ton of things like that, just things that like the thing I was telling you about with the laser burning, where if a newbie test is to like just put the laser on somebody's head, and if they spin a 180 and change direction, like boom, like there's that kind of thing, like how people behave under pressure. Like another aesthetic theme of the spy side, on the spy side game, is this idea of, and this gets to the adjusting thing, which is part of what got you highlight last time before I shot you, which is like in most video games you're playing a shooter or something like that. Even a shooter that is intense player skill, like Counter-Strike or whatever, and you're just constantly fidgeting. You're like, oh, I'm just gonna look around this corner. I'm gonna do this thing. I'll walk over here. I'll do this thing. Because it doesn't matter, right? Like you're just kind of expressing your nervousness and your kind of energy by like you're just kind of moving around. You're strafing a little bit to the side. You're waiting. You're bobbing up and down. You're crouching, whatever, right? In SpyParty, like you kind of have to. You kind of have to breathe through it. In other words, like let's say you walk up to a conversation and you miss the conversation circle, which happens to everybody. I mean, it like happens obviously more to newbies than it does to elite players, but it just still happens occasionally. The best thing to do in SpyParty is just stand outside the conversation. The sniper doesn't know exactly where the conversation circles are.
Yeah.
So the lines that you see on your screen aren't on the sniper screen, and so they won't know immediately that you're outside the conversation. However, if you like dodge into the conversation or immediately bail and leave the conversation because you're all nervous, they'll see that really fast. And so it's you have to just kind of be a little bit zen with it. You're like, and kind of like this gets to what I imagine a real life kind of spy situation would be like, where it's not going perfectly, but you have to just deal with it as it is. You have to keep playing in character, And so it reminds me of like that reminds me of like if Hitchcock was going to film a let's say there's a couple and the husband's cheating on the wife or whatever, and had just had the affair. The person who he's having an affair was over, but then the wife comes home, right after the other one leaves, and he notices that there's a wine glass with lipstick on the mantle, right? That they got left over from their little tryst, at lunchtime or whatever. And the way Hitchcock, if you think about it, the way Hitchcock would film that would just be every shot of the man and his wife in the living room would have the wine glass in it. Right? It would be on the corner, and then he switched views, and it would be over there. And the man's like, you can't just go pick up the wine glass and go like, I better get this out of here, because like, that totally gives it away. So the man's trying to keep the woman from looking at the thing or whatever. You can imagine that kind of like Hitchcockian treatment of that, and it's kind of like I'm trying to go for that a little bit on the spy side, where it's like, you need to not draw attention to yourself. It's like if you do an imperfect path, like if you have to just roll with it, you have to just breathe through it and go with confidence. You can't like, oh, let's do over, let me do that one more time, I'll do that jump again, or whatever, like in most games. And I find that really interesting because it's very different than it's a very different feeling than you get with most games, where you have all these micro adjustments that you can do that are just inconsequential, right? They're just part of like expressing yourself in the game. And here you kind of like you have to stay in character. The deception aspect of it forces you to make certain decisions that are very different. So if you watch newbie games, they'll stream a newbie game or something like that, and they're just adjusting all over the place. So like they walk into the middle of the room before they know where they're going, right? Which is what you do in a game. Like you're playing Gears of War, you just walk out there and you're like, oh, I think I'll go left. Oh, okay. Here it's like camera management on the spy side. You have to like here's a piece of advice for you in this next game. Like rotate the camera around so you can see where you are and where you're going, and hopefully the laser as well. Decide exactly where you're going to go. Now sometimes you have to like improvise because like somebody will fill your conversation slot or whatever. But in general, decide where you're going to go and then go straight there. Don't walk into the middle of the room, change your mind, do this thing, do that. Like just decide what you're going to do and go do it. And so that kind of like walk with confidence and like breathe through it when things don't go right is just an important part of it. And that feels very different from most games. And so I really like that aspect of it.
Okay. All right.
You ready?
I'm taking these ideas on board. I'm going to do well this time. I'm going to do
well,
at least
the funny
one
thing
mission.
the funny thing is when I get mentored too because with the elite players. In fact, I have this like streaming show that I've only done one episode yet of, but I want to keep doing, which is called SpyParty Masterclass, where I have one of these top 20 players mentor me, and like the number of things I do wrong constantly. And trying to remember, like, okay, this time I'm not going to talk as soon as I do the thing, and then I'm going to like I enter the conversation circle wrong, and so it's just like this all the way down. Like it's just there's just an endless number of these kinds of little details. All right, here we go.
Do it.
Good luck. All right, I'm memorizing statues again. So we got 3, 3, 3, 1.
5, 5, 2, 9.
Yeah,
6,
exactly.
3.
1, 1, 2, 1. It's hard because I added more statues on this map. Okay. And so there's 8 statues total. So it's beyond the there's that psychology paper that talks about it's really hard to talk while you're playing sniper. It talks about the number of yeah, exactly. I'm gonna keep talking as another handicap player. There's a psychology paper that talks about like the number you can memorize easily, like the max number of information, digits and things like that. And that's why phone numbers in the U.S. are like 5 digits long. It's like a good number that you can memorize, or they talk about that. So I call it the rule of, I can't remember what it's called, the rule of 5, 6, or 7 or something weird like that. Or 7 digits, not 5 digits. This is beyond that. It's like with 8 statues, it's like, okay, you got to keep repeating it. So it's 3, 3, 3, 1. 1, 1, 2, 1. You remember that for me, will you? You help out.
I remember it. 5, 4, 2, 1.
Yeah, exactly.
6, 0, 5, 2.
My guess is that I've scared you away from statues at this point. So I probably
don't know. I might be double bluffing.
I know, exactly. That's the thing. It's like the Yomi's a little intense. And the game kind of auto-balances that way because of that, right? Like if something's a little out of balance, like on the sniper side, for example, that makes it less likely to be chosen, which means that the spy's more likely to choose it next time. And so I don't have to have perfect balance.
Have you ever, in either when making this or just in life in general, have you ever actually been in a situation like this, at a party like this, and found
with a
yourself
sniper rifle outside? No.
Yeah, obviously.
Thankfully.
No, actually, like been in a situation where
I definitely
you're at a party, like thinking, oh, I wonder like how this would compare to the game.
Yeah, I definitely observe human behavior, especially at parties and in crowds of people, differently now than I did, which is great. I mean, like everything from audio, like just being on ball, like trying to just be very conscious of what it sounds like, being at the party, what the what the density of people, how they coalesce, things like that. That gets us back to a conversation that we could have after we play about. You asked a question about human behavior, and there was an interesting game design thing that I learned while playing it, like what the goal, like how the game should feel from a human behavior standpoint, where it's different than I originally thought. And so we talk about that. We can talk about that afterwards. But right now, I don't have a lot of suspects here, so I need to actually start playing. Who
are you thinking?
I only have. Well, I'll be honest with you. I only have one highlight right now, and it's John Revolta.
Pretty well then.
He's the guy. Yeah, I know. You're doing better. I don't remember where Orange Dress got that book, so I'm going to keep an eye on her. You, however, are low on time. That I'm pretty sure.
Oh! Oh,
No,
winner!
yes, nice work. And I was right. You were right next to her too.
Yeah.
That's always the best when the laser comes over and you're like, no, no, no.
I
And
thought
it's
you were
like,
gonna
shoot
shoot me. Like,
I,
my
yeah,
heart's like,
exactly.
oh, it's got me.
Awesome. Oh, you got the seduction done. Good. Oh, and you got a walking bug. Nice work. Very nice.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, I
didn't actually mean to do that.
Oh, really? You did it. So at the very beginning of the game, or a minute into the game, you you bugged the ambassador.
He probably was walking away as I went to do it.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
and then you got successful flirts. Who was your seduction target? It was purple dress. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Not bad.
Yeah.
Good game. You won that fair and square.
Pretty good.
Yeah. So so what's that? Say again.
Sorry, go on. You go.
Oh no, I was just going to say, just back to the question you asked before that about the human behavior. It was interesting because I used to think the goal of the game, from I guess what's the right way to put it? Technology is kind of slightly the wrong word, but that integration of animation and AI and design that makes the behavior. I used to think the goal was to get it as smooth and subtle as possible. And by that I mean I used to think removing hardtails was the goal of the game. I used to think the bug ambassador has an animation that if you see that animation, that's the only, only the spy can do that animation, and you just shoot the person, right? And there's a few things happened actually in getting the game working and playing a lot. Number one, just to speak to the hardtail thing specifically, which is kind of the smaller insight, which is that I used to think the goal was to get rid of the hardtails and everything should be soft and behavioral tails. I'll explain what the 3 different categories are after this. But then I realized, actually, if you get away with a hardtail, like you swap the statue or you bug the ambassador, and you're still alive 10 or 20 seconds later, it's a huge relief on the spy side. You know you got away with it. And that's really important. That kind of relief cycle in game design is really important for the player to feel, especially in a game like this where, this game, Jonathan Blow described this game as chewing nails, right? It's very stressful to play this game. And so any kinds of relief, and in fact there's multiple kinds of relief that I want to do. One of them is this one, where I realize it's important to have the hardtails in there because they're the only time that you really get that what, I made it, whew, awesome, It feels very kind of spy-like. I got away with it, haha, and that kind of a little bit of tension release and a feeling of empowerment and not so much I've got a chain gun in Doom empowerment, but that spy-like feeling of I pulled one over on the other person. Super important. And that gets to this other aspect, which is this I used to think that by getting rid of all the hardtails and by making the animations really smooth and by making the pathing perfect and just having everything be totally very smooth conversation simulator-y, that would be the goal of the game because that's obviously the most realistic, quote unquote. And then I realized, and the kind of phrase that made me kind of start to take this to heart was Frank Lance called the game a clockwork party. Frank Lance, the NYU Game School guy, and game designer, Area Code, did Drop 7 and whatnot. He's a super smart guy, a good friend. And he said, he talked about in an interview one time with me, he said, the game was like a clockwork party. And it took a while for it to sink in, but it's true in the sense of, what he means by that is it's kind of this exposed system, right? Where the kind of mechanistic aspect to it is really important for both players to be able to kind of predict what's happening and kind of make a model of how it works. If it was a completely smooth, no edges simulation with a bunch of floating point numbers that are constantly, just rising and falling, as opposed to now this person is clearly going to be at the bookshelf for 2 animation cycles and things like that, I think the game would be worse because you need those edges to hold on to. This is the thing when you see a game like Facade or Prom Week and games like that are about human behavior that are trying to do more of that continuous thing, that feels like they're lacking. They don't have these things you can grab onto. So in SpyParty, the clockwork party aspect to it, I realize, is actually part of the what works about the game, not something to be filed down, where you want those edges to hold on to. You want a certain level of predictability, and you want these people to create this, the NPCs to create this space that both players feel like is a playing field that they can understand, right? There's random numbers in there. It's much when I set out to make this game, my favorite game of all time is Go, the Asian board game. I think it's the most beautiful game of all time, and it's just incredible. And it's an intense player skill game. It's it's just a beautiful game. I don't know if you've ever played it, but it's awesome. it's like a Ferrari to chess's like jalopy. It's like it's just unbelievably elegant and everything. And I like chess a lot too, but it's just like you play Go next to it, and it's just like, oh my god. But anyway, I used to think that I was trying to make Go basically. I was like, not actually literally, obviously, because it's not stones on a board, but I was like, that Go was a game that was really inspirational to me, and I realized part of the way through that actually I ended up making poker. The poker, Texas Hold'em especially, is another totally beautiful, amazing game, but in a very different way from Go. Poker's got a lot of randomness in it. It's got a lot of like, oh crap, I got a shitty hand. All these things that can happen that don't happen in Go, right? Like Go is full knowledge, everything's sitting right there. It's this like crystalline, perfection, this jewel cut, and whereas poker is this like as another Frank Lanceism, like it's this messy, dirty, thing about expected value and probabilities and all this. But like I realized like instead of fighting the poker aspect of my game, I should embrace it. And so I totally have. And so like, when you spawn next to a statue in an elite play, that's bad, right? Because in newbie play, that's good because, hey, I spawn next to a statue, I can just get a mission done really quick, right? But if you spawn next to a statue in elite play, you're already suspected, right? Like, boom, I've got a highlight. And getting rid of a highlight is really hard. And so, but embracing that like crappy hand and dealing, with poker, it's like I'm waiting for this card to come out. It doesn't come out on the flop, or like all of these things where you like kind of like dealing with what comes, and reacting to it is super important in SpyParty. And so, so kind of that like. This is something John Blow and I talk about a lot, which is this idea of like listening to the game. Like the game was telling me it wanted to be poker, not Go, and so I'm glad that I like stopped and like was thoughtful about it. It was like, okay, yeah, no, the game's right. Like it wants to be more poker-like in the sense of the kind of messy probabilities and randomness aspect. Poker, Texas Hold'em's an incredibly deep player skill game. Like there's nothing to be ashamed of for having Texas Hold'em style gameplay. It's just very different from that kind of crystalline full knowledge thing, and so that was an interesting thing. And so that relates back to what I was talking about earlier with the Clockwork Party, like listening to the game. Like it became clear that the game that the kind of mechanistic aspect of the party, and now that doesn't mean like the animations are going to get better, the pathing system's going to get better, it's all going to change. I mean, we should play at least one game on the new map just to see the new art and everything, even though it's not super playable. But it's all going to get better. But that idea of having the probabilities with which they'll go to the bookcase versus the statue versus how often they'll talk, how many times they'll for how many seconds they'll look at the statue on average, things like that, having that more kind of explicit, having those like they're not documented anywhere, but having those be learnable is super important actually to the game. It makes the game it takes the game from this kind of just like what it would be if it was a full quote unquote just completely analog party simulator. It would be hard to find anything to grab onto there. Whereas now it's because like, oh, I think that person was in conversation for too long, or that person went to the bookshelf but then left really early. Like being able to kind of like have a probability that you have a hunch, have a feeling for what the kind of clockwork NPC characters are going to do is super important for both players feeling like they can understand, parse what's going on visually, and make a plan for how to interact with it. And so having that exposed system, that Clockwork Party, is super important. And so so to wrap this part of that question up, what you asked is, have I learned things about human behavior? And yes, but the most important thing behaviorally that I learned is that the game's not trying to be a full realistic party simulator. It's trying to be a game, it's a systemic, competitive game where the kind of playing field is this set of human-like behavior, but the like part is really important.
Right. Okay. Well, what I think we should
do. That was a very long answer.
Probably. It was an excellent answer. No, it's kind of answered. I had lots of little sub questions, but you've sort of answered them all in one go. So that's
all right, go me.
I like. So what we should probably do is I should have a go at being sniper now.
All right. Cool.
And so I guess we just go back and there we go. I can choose sniper from there, and then you.
Yeah. So choose. I will. Do you want to do veranda again?
No, I will do a different one.
Okay. You want to do? There's some hard. Oh, sorry. Let's see. It doesn't have go back, so we have to cancel out to the match menu. It's totally ghetto. Like all the UI is going to be replaced. Okay. Let's see. What I will do. Do you want to do ballroom?
Yeah, is ballroom like the first one, the main one?
Yeah, ballroom's like kind of the default map.
Okay. Yeah. Let's.
You want to do that one? Okay. So I'm going to do known 7. Known 7 means I have to try and this should be impossible. I have to try and do all of these missions.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. All right.
We'll see how poorly this goes. You should be able to shoot me.
We'll see. We'll see. Okay, so the people kind of watching it now can see what it looks like from the sniper perspective. And as far as I'm aware, I can right-click to kind of deselect people to kind of black them out, and then I can left-click on them to make them glow, which means that
yes, you can. We just call them highlight and low light, and it's just a ways of. There's no gameplay associated with it in the sense that like you don't get a score or anything like that.
Yeah.
But like it's a way for you to manage your suspects, and that is very important. As the sniper, like being able to,
Oh man, I think when you just did banana bread, every single person in the room was in a conversation.
That was the goal.
Oh no! I was waiting for that. I was thinking, be able to cut some people out there.
Totally.
So I'm sort of trying to. I'll tell you what I should do. I should ask you a question to put you off.
Totally.
So one thing I'm wondering at the moment is. Obviously, you've been making the game for quite a while now, a couple of years, or even a few years maybe, if I believe right. So I mean, by this point, what do you spend most of your time doing? Are you still sort of tweaking all of this behavioral style things?
Yeah,
I mean, is it more of a content thing now, really?
Well, right now I am. I've got the whole game on the floor in pieces, and we're playing the build that actually works, but. Right now, I'm trying to add spectation and replays, and that just means basically, network multiplayer games are very, very difficult. Especially 3D network multiplayer games with animated characters and blah blah blah. And so it's and then I want to do spectation, which would allow other people to log into our game, for example, and and watch us play, right? And then cast it and that kind of thing. And so, I need to take the whole game apart. And I want to do replays too. I want a replay database where every single game is on the net, for people to study, like for the elite games and things like that. And so, it just requires me to take the whole game apart. Like the game is like kind of. I don't believe in prototyping anymore. I mean, this is a topic unto itself. From like Spore, we did a great job of prototyping UI and tech. Like the UI, the creature editor, and stuff like that. But we did a terrible job, in my opinion, of prototyping gameplay. I think Spore is a very flawed game, gameplay-wise, design-wise, and like. So I don't believe in prototyping gameplay, and so I just started writing the game, The problem is when you just start writing the game and you have no idea what you're doing, you end up with a giant mess. And so I have a giant mess right now, and I'm just trying to take it apart enough to actually to get it. So when you do things like spectation, replays, porting to other, porting, it runs on Windows right now, porting to other systems, things like that, it's those things like require you to clean stuff up. Like those things are good ways of forcing you to clean things up, and so I'm taking this opportunity to do that, but it's just painful. Like there's just so much stuff I need to clean up to get to the ability to get it to the point where I can let people log on to other people's games and play and things like that. It's just very like there's just certain kinds of programming challenges that there you go.
No way.
Oh, I was low lit. Yes.
You were low lit as well. What?
That's the best.
Oh man. It's because it's weird because as the spy, it's you've got these like focused goals and you're thinking, right, I'm gonna head over there now, I'm gonna head over there. But then when you're the sniper, it's sort of incredibly overwhelming. Like you've got these like 12 or 13 different people or something. It could be any one of them. You're looking for tells, but you're thinking, well, what if I'm looking at the wrong person?
Yes.
And somebody's doing a tell over there. And so I think to myself, oh well, it can't be that person. That person's been stood there for like 30 seconds now. He wouldn't have just been stood there. So then then I low light that person, and then I panic. Oh God, he must have been doing some things by now. Well, this person's. I've been watching them out the corner of my eye. I don't think they've been doing anything. So you low light them, and then it all sort of just cascades down.
Exactly. Okay, so are you still on the log screen, the results screen?
Yes, I am, yeah.
Okay, so let's scroll through here and I'll show you what happened.
Okay.
So you had the right instinct in the 30-second thing, right?
Yep.
But the problem was I rushed a whole bunch of missions. Look at the top. So scroll down so you can see the transfer microfilm at 2:43, and then I contacted the double agent 7 seconds later, and then 10 seconds later, I purloined the guest list, and then 5 seconds after that, I bugged the ambassador. So there's 4 out of 7 down, right? And then I added time.
You even added time because I was watching.
Yes.
So when you add time, does it add immediately?
Yes. Well, there's 3 different. So the action test, that little thing, the little active reloady kind of thing. It's not active reload. It's inspired by active reload, but it's randomized in 2 dimensions. Whereas active reload's more of a rhythm game. It's the same every time in Gears. So I randomize it in 2 dimensions. So you have to actually pay attention. So that's another thing on the spy side where it's like, okay, I'm gonna actually try it or I'm not. Anyway, I white tested, which means it added 45 seconds immediately on both clocks. If you red test that, meaning you screw it up, it adds 45 seconds but beeps. Normally it only beeps at every minute. If you green test it, it dilates time on the sniper's machine, meaning it slows your clock down to add the 45 seconds, so you have to actually spend more time checking. But in that case, I white tested it, as you can see right above it, action test white. So that just did it. But then what happened was, yeah, well, I mean, it's just there's a lot, like you said, you're snowed under with information.
Yeah, totally.
And it goes down, and then I swapped the statues and inspected 2 statues back at the thing, back in the back statues. But then I didn't do anything for a very long time. Okay, and shortly after that, I got a low light because I was just hanging out because I rushed so much. I knew I had a lot of time towards the end, and so that allowed me to just chill in a conversation. And your panic level's rising, right? During like as you're not sure, you're starting to low light people who just to try and get them off your plate, And so that worked out well for me. Like
one thing that I find interesting about how I can do nothing as a spy. I could literally just walk around and do 0 of the objectives.
People,
and then the sniper panics and shoots somebody just because they think, oh, he must have done something.
No, if you have an itchy trigger finger, if you know you're playing a sniper with an itchy trigger finger, you can just leave the AI on. You don't even need to walk around yourself. Like, at the beginning, you can just leave it on. Here's the problem, though, and this is funny because, SpyParty was the final game of the Omegathon at PAX this year, PAX West, which is super cool, and it was a great time, and they did a great job with the game, and I was super happy. And but the final game, the guy left the AI on the entire time, and the other guy shot the wrong person. But he realized right after he did that is he never heard the banana bread, and they were playing 4 known missions where you had the banana bread, and so he shot prematurely, even though the other guy could not have been done, right? Just because he panicked. And so that idea of like playing off the sniper's like panic, that's where framing people can go, like can come from. Like the sniper, I mean. Somebody, when you first play the game, there was a great kind of like review written of the game in the beta forums that actually got posted on Kotaku because I sent it to Totolo and those guys, and because it was just so well written and everything. And this guy was like wrote this little review of the beta, and he was basically saying like how disempowered you feel as a spy. I mean, he loved the game, but he was writing this kind of like little prose, like kind of half fan fiction kind of thing, where he's like, I'll show him as soon as I get the rifle, I'll show those spies, and then he's like, as soon as he like switches to sniper, he's like, oh my God, who invited all these people to this party, right? Because you think you're being so obvious as the spy, and really the sniper just almost always has no idea. You'll often see these dual streams where both sides will be streaming, even in elite play. And the sniper side, the guy will be commentating as he's playing, or the spy side rather, the guy will be commentating, and he or she will say, oh man, I'm totally screwed now. I'm sure I've got a highlight, and like he totally saw that. And meanwhile, you're also watching the sniper screen, and the person's like low lit, and the other guy has no idea that it's him. And so like even in elite play, you're just so convinced that you're always dead. And so that's why
it seems like part of it is sort of confidence in a way, which I guess is like in real life. It's a bit like even when you're sort of messing up a little bit, as long as you stay confident and just strive ahead and keep at the
exactly. It's like do not. Yeah, one of the advanced. So there's a thread of like advanced. Basically like what's the word? Basically advice for players who want to become mid-level players from the elite players, right? And one of the pieces of advice, there's like a thread full of them, but one of the pieces of advice is don't give up until you're dead, right? Like, do not give up, because you don't know what they know. Like, you thought you were dead last game, and I shot the person next to you. Like, it wasn't you, right? If you had panicked, I might have stopped and then been like, wait, why'd that person drop the statue, or whatever.
Yeah.
And so, that said, there's just enough micro where you can run for it. If you know they've made you, you can dodge behind a bigger character at the last second, get them to shoot the wrong person. It's very rare that it works, but like if you are 100% sure, like you're in the countdown timer, you're almost certain that they made you, like you can run for it, but you're totally dead if you haven't done it in with little enough time left over,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that idea of like just playing it cool, like happens both at, like I was saying, in the conversation, or I missed a target, I missed a floor pad or whatever. It happens in the small, but also in the big, which is just like, yeah, you have to keep pretending like you can't see the laser, and you have to keep pretending like you're, no one special, and keep your confidence up and just keep playing, because you don't know until they actually pull the trigger. And then, in fact, they usually don't know until they pull the trigger. Oftentimes, unless they see a hard tell and it's just you're toast. Oftentimes they're like, I'm pretty sure he's done with his missions. I gotta take the shot,
Mm-hmm. Okay, right. What I think we should do then is I think we should check out the the new visuals, which were added earlier this year, I think.
Well, so we've been working on them for over 2 years, basically two years. But yeah, so go scroll to the modern map.
Yeah.
And yes. But they finally just got in at PAX, so they're still limping along. It's not very playable. There's only 5 characters, so it's not a very playable map. But it will show you a hint of what it's going to look like. It'll look better than this. Like, our lighting model's not correct yet. The animations are still popping a lot, and there's only a subset of things available to do. But it gives a taste of like what it will look like eventually, which is, if I do say so myself, pretty sweet, because John's an awesome artist.
Well, this is the thing. So I was looking at this last night, sort of just having a gander at how it all looked, and it looks incredible. The thing that I wonder, so I guess after you've added all these new animations for the characters, I'm guessing then a lot of what you already had in place in terms of tells, etc., sort of had to be heavily adjusted, because suddenly you've got like facial tells, for example,
totally,
things like that.
I mean, that's part of the reason that's part of the reason I say it's limping right now. Like, we haven't done any of that adjustment yet. We just kind of shoved it all in there just to get it working. Yeah. And so it's going to be a retuning of the entire game once we get all the characters in and stuff. I'm going to wait to tune it until we have like 10 characters. John started to work on the next 5 now, and so I'm going to wait until we have like a critical mass of characters, so that we can actually get a game going. Like 5 characters is just not enough to actually make a map. Yeah, but 10 will be. And then we'll start
just incredible. Just so the more like it actually sort of looks like a group of people, or the way that they turn their heads to look to the person who's talking, etc.
Yeah, which is funny because the old characters turn their head to look who's talking too. You just never noticed that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, there's all kinds of things that these guys make the UI look worse, right? Because they're so nice looking.
Yeah.
That.
It suddenly makes all the kind of shapes all over the floor, etc. Like, oh no, what's happening here? The game's broken.
No, exactly. I'm gonna have to make a really pretty new like outline for the conversation circle.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks amazing. So yeah, as you say, it's just the this one small area right now, isn't there?
Yeah, and in fact, I've got as you can see, I've got the the question is, I don't think you were done flirting yet. So I'm not going to take the shot, but I think you white tested that. So he was the only one talking. Usually you want to wait till someone else is talking as well. If you green tested it, then I've got a bad highlight. Wait, who was outside the conversation? He was outside the conversation, so it can't be him. If the older woman is if you are actually this guy and the older woman is your seduction target, you're very lucky because she keeps leaving the conversation and coming back.
We're talking about Helen Mirren here.
Yes, exactly. It is Helen Mirren.
It's Helen Mirren,
at least
and it's Morgan Freeman. But I don't know who the others are.
So we demorganified. So we demorganified him 3 times, and if you've got an older black gentleman with a goatee, it's Morgan Freeman. It doesn't matter how much Morgan you try and remove from him. So the portly guy is William Taft.
Okay.
And the woman is like a combination of a few different actresses, Anne Hathaway and a couple other people. But yeah, no, we tried to demorganify him multiple times. It's the same with Helen Mirren. I mean, to speak frankly, because I want this game to be really diverse, I'm really happy with the diversity and inclusivity of my community.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons it's not on Steam yet, is because it's just I just don't want the players yet. I want to make sure the community is really solid. But like, you know, she has rather, like, if you look at the younger woman character, she has A cup, smaller breast size, not normal video game breasts. But the older woman has large breasts, and it's like we reduced her breast size 3 times as well. Helen Mirren has enormous breasts. Like, you don't notice it until you do a model. You're like, oh my god, this looks like a video game caricature. Wow, she just keeps leaving and coming back. I think you must be Helen Mirren now, because she's just doing too much leaving and coming back, even though she wasn't talking. Overtime. Oh, you just added time, didn't you? Oh no! Nicely done.
I was Morgan Freeman.
Nicely done. Okay, so you bugged. Ah, nice work. Okay, so what happens is overtime you have to shoot your top suspect, because in overtime there's 3 different ways the game ends at 0-0. If it goes into actual overtime, it'll sit at 0-0 if there's a pending mission, like, you know, pending swap on the statue or things like that, or if you've added time in a certain way. It can be at 0-0 and the spy can still lose, but if it goes into actual overtime, the spy will win unless you shoot within 10 seconds, basically. Yeah. You know the spy's in the countdown timer. So you went into countdown at 1.8 seconds, and so I didn't know when you went in, so I just had to shoot my top suspect at that point.
Yeah.
So nicely done.
I've never seen that before, actually. I tried to bug the ambassador, and as I was bugging him, he just decided to walk away. So I was like, oh, what am I going to do now? So
yes. Well, wait, actually, is that the first time that you tried bugging?
I know.
Begin bug plan. No, you tried it 30 seconds and he bailed. Yeah. So see, right after at 30 seconds, ambassador's personal space violated. Do you see that?
Yeah.
What happens there is that the ambassador doesn't like people to be too close for too long. And so what happened is you probably got moseyed into the position and then waited a little bit too long, and he bugged out. Yes, but you done nicely done.
I was trying to do the flirting, but it was taking too long, Joe, because I had to keep flirting and then sort of going away, coming back. So in the end, I thought, no, I'm just gonna try and do the bugging.
I can't remember what I saw. I guess so. You must have green test the. Yeah, you got a green test on the on the banana bread. Yeah. So that's I said that was gonna be my downfall. I just was like, I was taking a gamble that you weren't that you missed your green test.
Yeah.
It's funny because you're recording video, and video like screws with the frame rate, and so that makes the action test harder when you're doing video. So I kind of took all that into account and was like, yeah, I probably missed the green. But that was my downfall right there. Nicely done.
Fantastic. Well, yeah, I think I won 2 games out of 4, didn't I? Or did I win 2 games out of 3? I can't even remember.
No, it says in the corner. It's 4 games. I won as spy and sniper, and you won as spy and sniper. Oh. Or no, you won as spy. Wait, what happened here? Okay, so it says right here. It's just a little bit hard to parse. I out of 4 games, I shot. So the 2 I lost were as sniper. I shot civilians twice.
Okay.
I shot the spy once, and I got a mission win once. So I shot the wrong person twice.
Yeah.
So you won 2 spy games, which given at the beginning of the interview you said that you were worried about your spy game.
Yeah.
You won 2 spy games, so not bad.
I'm quite happy about that.
Yeah, totally. Yes. Way to go.
Right. I think we've probably been talking for far too long now. So
that was much longer than a half an hour, but that's
it was. But it was all good though, all good.
Excellent.
Right. Well, thank you very much for talking to me, and
thanks a lot.
Perhaps when I have worked my skills, then I'll be able to challenge you to a rematch.
Yes, well, we can definitely. The thing about the community that's I'm most proud of is that you can log on as a newbie. Let's see what your so you played 7 games total in this time, not counting the IGF build, which wasn't online in the same way. You can go in as a newbie at your level, and you can ask a player that's got thousands of wins for a mentor game, and they'll go, oh sure, and they'll just like totally train you. Yeah. And like that's a great way to get good fast, because the community is just so friendly. So yeah, totally. I mean, it's a wonderful thing. Like it's in contrast to most online competitive games that are this intense competitively. Like I'm so proud of the community. They're just such a great group of people. So yeah, so if you want to get better faster, do what I do, which is get mentor games from the elite players.
Sounds like a plan. Right.
Awesome.
Excellent. Well, yeah, thank you very much for talking to me.
Okay, thanks so much.